The house was empty, but not quiet. Her scent still clung to the curtains, sandalwood and sea breeze, the kind she always wore for summer, even in winter. The echoes of her laughter still danced across the walls she once painted pastel with her bare hands, brush tucked behind her ear like an artist chasing dreams. But there were no more dreams here, just silence. And the click of the realtor's heels as she walked through, clipboard in hand, commenting on the natural light and open floor plan. She had missed our anniversary again. Except this time, it wasn't a forgotten dinner. It wasn't another excuse about meetings running late. This time, she was smiling in someone else's arms, on a beach, in a white bikini, under golden sunlight, while I sat with a signed sale agreement under cold ceiling lights. We had built this house together, one room at a time. She had begged for that deep emerald kitchen tile. I laid it down with my own hands. She decorated every wall with prints of our laughter, framed in thrifted gold. And now? Now it belongs to someone else. Because long before she returned from her shoot, I'd already handed over the keys. She thought I'd just sit and wait. But this time, I sold the house where she made her canvas, and I made sure her name was no longer on the deed, or in my story. The pasta was still steaming when I lit the candle, one flame, soft, flickering like it wasn't sure it should stay lit, like it knew better, like it had been here before. 2 wine glasses, 1 bottle of Chardonnay, opened 20 minutes too early, breathing for no one. And that pale blue ceramic plate, the one she chose on our first trip to the coast, sat waiting across from me, a silent witness to my optimism. I had cooked her favorite, roasted garlic pasta with lemon zest and white wine, the one she said always made her feel like Paris was hiding in the steam, like we were far away from deadlines and DMs and lighting rigs, just us, before the filters, before the followers, before him. I adjusted the silverware, not because it mattered, but because I needed something to fix, something to straighten, because nothing else in my life felt aligned anymore. I sat down and stared at the empty chair, a chair that, lately, had grown more comfortable without her in it. I tried not to check my phone, but I did, twice. No messages, no missed calls, no running late babe, no save me some. Instead, there was a ping, an Instagram notification. And I already knew. But I tapped it anyway, like a fool reaching for a flame he swore wouldn't burn this time. It's really her dream shoot day, grateful to be working with legends like him. At Sun God Studio. The photo loaded slowly, as if time itself wanted to spare me. She was barefoot in the sand, laughing, sunlit and glowing like she was exactly where she belonged. Wrapped around him, tall, bronzed, shirtless, smiling like he knew he'd won something. I stared at her face, how it tilted back when she laughed, how her hand rested so easily on his chest, how her eyes weren't searching for mine anymore. Not even a mention of the date, of our day, the one we promised would always be Untuck's head, no matter what city she flew to, no matter what camera wanted her next. 3 years ago, she made me swear we'd never miss this night. No matter where I am, she said, this date is ours, remind me, make pasta, I'll come home to it. I reminded her this morning. She left anyway. The pasta had cooled, the wine had warmed, but my heart froze. I sat there for a while, long enough to hear the candle hiss out on its own. Long enough for the silence to become the loudest thing in the room. At some point, I stood, took her plate to the sink without a bite, poured the untouched wine down the drain. The sound was sharp, final. Then I opened the drawer. The one at the back of my desk. The one I hadn't touched in a year. Inside, a black folder, labeled in my handwriting, exit plan. She didn't know I had it, didn't know I'd been updating it every time she broke a promise, every time I found myself waiting in candlelight for a woman already lighting up someone else's feed. Inside were the scanned deeds, my lawyer's retainer agreement, notes I'd scribbled in the dark, things like split the joint account and change the emergency contact. But the last page was blank. I picked up the pen. For a long time, I didn't write. I just stared at the white, the kind of white that asks questions, that dares you to fill it with something final. And then I wrote a single sentence. She missed our anniversary for him, so I'm selling the house she made a home. I closed the folder, placed it on the table where her plate had been, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't wait up. I turned off the porch light, locked the door, and let the silence take her place. She came home like nothing had broken, keys jingling, shoes kicked off at the door, her laughter echoing into the hall as if she hadn't just vanished for 3 days. There was sand in her hair, and ocean still clinging to her skin, glinting in the moonlight like borrowed glitter. She looked golden, like the beach had kissed her shoulders and kept all the parts of her I used to call mine. She dropped her bag by the stairs, casually, like it didn't carry the scent of someone else's sunblock. Then she walked into the kitchen, her bare feet against the cool tile, trailing salt water in silence. Her arms wrapped around me from behind, that same hug, the same pressure, the same weight. But something was missing, something I couldn't name yet, like a melody I'd heard too many times to realize the note had changed. "I'm so sorry, babe," she whispered against the back of my neck, lips soft, too soft. "Things ran late, you know how shoots go." I didn't turn around, not yet. Instead, I stared out the window, where the garden she planted had started to wilt. She hadn't watered it in weeks, the flowers still bent toward the sun, still hoping, still reaching, like me. "You kissed him," I said, my voice a low hum, almost lost beneath the hum of the refrigerator. She stilled, only for a moment, then she exhaled a laugh, airy, too quick. "What are you talking about?" She circled in front of me, her smile trying too hard to stay on. "I only post what the brand wants, you know that, everything's curated." I looked at her, really looked. Her cheeks were windburned, her hair a mess of sea curls that looked better on postcards, but her eyes, those betrayed her. She always fidgeted with her phone when she lied, right thumb tapping the screen, opening apps she wasn't reading, and her voice, it always pitched too high when she felt cornered, like she was performing, even even with me. "So it wasn't real?" I asked, folding my arms. "The laughing, the way you touched his chest, the way he looked at you like he already knew you?" "God, you're being dramatic," she snapped, then softened instantly. "I was working, that's all it was." But I saw it, not the beach, not the man, not even the post. I saw myself, in her reflection, not the man she used to wait for at the window with herbal tea and sleepy eyes. Not the man she used to trace lines across with her fingers, whispering dreams into his collarbone. Just a shadow now, just an obstacle in a life she'd already rewritten without me. She reached for my face, palm warm with sun, but I stepped back. That small movement was louder than anything I could have said. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something else, but the words got stuck, or maybe she knew they wouldn't land. I moved to the dining table, the same one where I had waited 3 nights ago, candles lit, wine open. Her plate still sat there, untouched. She hadn't even noticed. I picked up something from the edge, a small glass jar, filled with beach glass she once brought home, soft blue, sea-worn edges. She called it forgotten treasure, said it reminded her of how beauty survives after being broken again and again. I held it between us. "Do you remember this?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Of course, that's from Malibu. You said it looked like my eyes." "I lied," I said, setting it down. "It never looked like your eyes, not even then." The air between us stretched, thick with the weight of truths we'd never say. Her hand dropped from where it hung mid-air. She blinked, and for a moment, I thought maybe guilt had finally cracked through the gloss. But no tears came, only silence. I stepped past her, brushing her shoulder. She didn't follow. That night, she slept in the guest room, said the light was softer there, said she needed to catch up on rest. I didn't argue, didn't ask her to stay, because something had already left. In the hallway, I paused beside the framed photo we took on our 2nd anniversary, her barefoot in the rain, my jacket draped over her shoulders, both of us laughing. The kind of laughing that comes from knowing you're with each other forever. But now, the frame looked off-kilter, tilted, wrong. I fixed it, only to realize, we weren't the people in that picture anymore, and maybe, we never were. The paint still clung to the corners of the baseboards, faint mint green, like a memory that hadn't yet learned how to fade. I ran my hand along the edge of the hallway, her hallway, half expecting it to hum back a song from when we still laughed here. When the scent of fresh paint and takeout filled the air and we danced barefoot over top because we couldn't afford rugs yet. She called this house her canvas. Said it was the first place in her life where she didn't have to ask permission to be bold. Every wall, every corner, every accent color, her declaration that she was here, alive, seen. She used to smear swatches across the wall with her fingertips, tilt her head and squint like a painter before a great work. "It's not just paint," she'd say, brush between her lips. "It's language." And I let her speak in strokes and silence. I handed her every tool. Not because I loved home improvement, but because I loved her improving. Because watching her build something made me believe we were building something too. The hallway. "Pale mint, serenity," she said. The bedroom, soft plum, intimacy. The dusty rose bathroom. She chose that one after a fight, said pink was a color that forgave you even before you asked. I watched her stand on stools, paint-splattered pajama pants tied at the ankles, hair in a knot, forehead streaked with color she forgot was there. I bought extra lighting for the kitchen, worked weekends to pay for the chandelier she saw in a showroom and whispered to under her breath, "I'd feel like a real artist under that glow." I never told her I returned my own birthday gift that year to afford it. She walked into the kitchen on a Thursday, and the chandelier was already there. She didn't ask how, just smiled, spun beneath it like a girl under moonlight, and whispered, "It's perfect." That smile was enough, for a while. But somewhere between the swatches and the final coats, she stopped seeing me. She used to ask me which shades I liked. Now she painted over them without asking. She used to hum while I held the ladder. Now she painted with earbuds in, soundproofing her world. She'd spend hours in the guest room, repainting it every season. "Art changes," she said once, when I asked why the third coat in a month. But when I asked if we were changing too, she blinked like I had spoken in a language she no longer understood. I remember one evening, I stood in the living room doorway, watching her roll a fresh coat of navy over the accent wall. She didn't notice I'd been standing there for almost 15 minutes, didn't look up once. My arms were crossed, not out of frustration, but to keep myself from falling apart. I finally said, quietly, "Do you remember when we painted this wall together?" She paused, looked at it, then at me. And she said, "It looks better now." I smiled, nodded, swallowed. Because how do you argue with someone who no longer shares your memory? I became the man behind the paint tray, the one who kept the supplies restocked, the one who fixed the light bulbs when she needed brightness, the one who held the ladder, even after she stopped climbing down to kiss me. She once said this house was her heart on walls. But now all I could see were colors I didn't choose, rooms I didn't belong to, spaces where I was the silhouette, not the subject. Love, I learned, isn't just letting someone create, it's being part of the art, and somewhere along the way, she stopped painting me in. That night, I walked into the bedroom alone. The soft plum walls were darker than usual. Maybe it was the light, maybe it was me. There was a dried streak of paint across the floor. She never noticed it. A quiet flaw, a reminder that something bled through and was left behind. I sat beside it, I traced it with my finger, and whispered the truth I'd been avoiding for months. I built a home for her heart, but she locked me out of every room. It started with a dead phone battery and a forgotten charger. Hers, not mine. She'd asked if I could find her charger in her bag while she was in the shower. I didn't mean to look beyond that. I didn't mean to swipe up, but the screen lit up as I reached for it, open, waiting, no lock, no password, just a quiet betrayal dressed as convenience. The gallery app was open. The last thumbnail is still loading from Cloud Sync. And I swear, something in me hesitated, like the universe offered a final exit before truth, and I didn't take it. I tapped the image, the beach. But not the polished, curated one she had posted, not the one with filters and branded tags. No hashtags, no audience, no facade, just her and him. She wasn't posing. She was caught in motion, hair tousled by wind, the sky behind her smudged like watercolor. She was looking at him, not the camera, with eyes I used to know. Soft, present. Eyes that once searched for mine across crowded rooms, across quiet mornings, across lifetimes. There was no smile. But there didn't need to be. Because she looked real. Real in a way she hadn't been with me in months. And he wasn't touching her. Wasn't holding her waist or brushing her hair from her foot. Ace. But somehow, that made it worse, because he didn't need to. The space between them wasn't empty, it was full of things that no camera could capture but every heart would recognize, undeniable, unspoken. I sat on the edge of the bed, her phone trembling in my hand, like it knew it had betrayed me too. The bathroom door was still closed, steam curled beneath it like fog trying to cover what was already revealed. I should have looked away, should have closed the app, should have respected the version of us I still wanted to protect. But I didn't. I kept scrolling. There were more photos, some blurry, some candid. One where she was holding a shell to his ear, both laughing. Another where they weren't touching but standing too close for it to be innocent. Not one of them had me in it. Not even a mention of me in file names or folders. Just him. And her. And something sacred I hadn't been invited to. I don't know what hurt more, the photo itself, or the fact that she hadn't even bothered to hide it. No locked album, no disguised folder name. Just carelessness, or worse, comfort, because you only forget to hide things you no longer think will be discovered, or no longer care if they are. The shower stopped. I could hear her humming softly on the other side of the door. And it hit me. She was slipping. Not just from me, but from the version of herself that once looked me in the eyes and whispered vows with shaking hands. The woman who promised forever with cracked lips and hopeful eyes, the woman who once said, even if the world turns its back, I won't. I held the phone like it might burn a hole through my skin. Part of me wanted to confront her right then, ask about the photos, demand names, explanations, truth wrapped in shame. But another part of me, the quieter, older, more tired part, I just sat there, because sometimes silence is not forgiveness, it's exhausting. I placed the phone on the nightstand, face down, like that would somehow undo the truth. She walked out moments later, towel in her hair, skin flushed from heat. "Find the charger?" she asked, voice light. I nodded, didn't speak, couldn't. She leaned down and kissed my cheek, too quick, too routine. I looked up at her, really looked. She didn't see it. I didn't feel the weight behind my eyes, didn't notice the fracture. She walked past me, humming, pulling her damp hair into a loose bun, already moving on. I stayed seated, motionless. And for the first time in our shared home, I felt like the stranger in the frame. It started as a joke. A spiteful one, if I'm being honest. The kind of joke you don't laugh at, just breathe through with clenched teeth and quiet ache. Late one night, with rain ticking like seconds on the roof, I opened the property listing site and typed in our address. No photos, no open house scheduled, just a headline. Available. Immediately, quiet street, south-facing sunroom. I didn't expect anything, didn't want anything. It was a dare to the universe, a test, a whisper into the void. What happens if I stop pretending this house is mine? And then the offers came. Not trickling, pouring. Cash buyers, developers, a couple who said the pastel walls reminded them of Europe. One even asked if I'd leave the mint hallway as is, said it had charm, but the message that stuck was from a woman named Elise. She was a florist, said she'd always dreamed of turning a sunroom into a greenhouse. She used words like nurture and light and healing space. She sounded nothing like the woman I built this house for, but exactly like someone it could belong to. She asked for a tour, no pressure, she said, just curiosity. I agreed, more out of resignation than hope. When she arrived, she didn't wear heels, didn't pretend to be impressed. She walked in quietly, with soft eyes and rough hands, hands that had held roots, not microphones. She moved through the room slowly, touching nothing, only looking. When she stepped into the sunroom, her breath caught. "This is where the morning lives," she whispered. I didn't respond. She turned to me, hesitant but kind. "Would you mind if I painted over the living room wall?" That wall, the deep navy one she had painted over our first color. The one she claimed felt more sophisticated, the one I stood by while she painted, wondering if that shade would ever feel like mine. I looked at Elise. Her face had no demands, just the gentle asking of someone who wanted to make space hers. "You can paint it whatever color you want," I said. She blinked, surprised. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," I said. Because by then, I had already decided, this house had never truly been my home. It was just her exhibit, her gallery of curated emotions, every room, a snapshot of the girl she wanted to be, and I had only been the lighting. The sale moved quickly. Elise sent over paperwork. Her lawyer was thorough. Mine didn't ask questions, just marked the lines where I needed to sign. I signed in silence. The pen ink bled slightly into the page, almost like it hesitated too. When I handed over the last document, Elise gave me a small smile. I know it probably means a lot to you, this house. I promise I'll take good care of it. I nodded, but I wanted to tell her, it doesn't mean what it used to. Because once, this was a dream. Now, it's a frame without a painting, a heartbeat without sound, a home where love had long stopped breathing. After she left, I walked through the rooms one last time. The mint hallway, the dusty rose bathroom, the kitchen under that chandelier I once broke myself to afford. Everything was still, but not peaceful, just hollow. I stood in the sunroom, the place Elise had fallen in love with, the place she saw as light and rebirth. But I only saw shadows there. Shadows of a woman dancing barefoot with a paintbrush, of dinners never eaten, of conversations that grew cold too fast. I reached up and touched the corner of the window. There, faint but visible, was her handwriting in white marker. Let it be soft. She wrote that during the first month we moved in, said it would remind us to fight gently. I left it there. Elise could paint over it, or not. Either way, it didn't belong to me anymore. Outside, the sky was turning gold, the kind of gold that breaks quietly into everything, even places it shouldn't reach. I closed the door behind me, and this time, I didn't look back. She came to me with tears. Morning light bleeding through the curtains like mercy that came too late. She didn't knock. Didn't ask. She just walked into the kitchen, the way she used to, as if the ghosts of her absence hadn't taken up permanent residence in the corners. Her eyes were red, no makeup, no lashes fluttering for the camera, just wet lashes, a crumpled hoodie, and words she had probably rehearsed in the mirror, words that once might have saved something. I miss you, she said, her voice cracking like old paint on the walls she chose. I looked up from my coffee, silent. I didn't offer her a seat. She stepped closer, trembling hands fidgeting with the sleeves of her hoodie. The beach meant nothing, she whispered, her breath hitched. It was just work. I didn't think. I never meant to. She didn't finish. Because she didn't need to, because we both knew that somewhere between posing for the lens and laughing in someone else's sun, she did think. And she did choose. She reached for me, her arms wrapped around my torso, a hug, a familiar one, the same hold she used to use when she came home smelling like wind and summer, the same way she used to cling to me like I was shelter, and I stood there, let her hold me, let her pretend that we were still whole, that I hadn't scrolled through the texts, that I hadn't watched her fingertips type his name like a secret and press send without hesitation. She tucked her head under my chin. I made a mistake, she whispered. I closed my eyes for a moment. The scent of her shampoo still lingered, lavender and something sweet, but it didn't comfort me anymore. It is haunted. I know you hate me right now, she said, but I'm here. Doesn't that mean something? It could have, once. But love doesn't survive on arrival, it survives on staying. I gently stepped back. Her arms dropped, limp, eyes wide. I stung by the distance. I didn't raise my voice, didn't accuse, didn't list the nights I waited at a table set for two, didn't replay the photos or the laughter that never reached me. Instead, I walked over to the dining table and picked up the envelope I had placed there the night before. I handed it to her. She stared at it, brows knitting. "What's this?" she asked, voice tight. I looked her in the eye. "The closing papers," I said quietly. "I sold it last week." She blinked. Once. Twice. Then her fingers tore open the flap, eyes scanning the first page like it might be a mistake. You sold the house?" I nodded. She laughed, sharp and disbelieving. "But I decorated this house. You left me alone in it." The silence after that sentence was heavier than any scream. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't think you'd actually." "Of course you didn't," I said. "Because you thought I'd keep waiting, that I'd stay in this museum of a love you no longer visited, that I'd keep living in a house built from your colors, but never painted with my presence." She looked around then, at the walls, the furniture, the living room rug she spent days searching for, the chandelier that still caught sunlight like it meant something. And maybe, in that moment, she realized she had curated everything but us. "This was our home," she said. "No," I replied, "it was your stage." Tears filled her eyes again, but they didn't fall. Maybe they were just for effect. Maybe they were real. I no longer knew how to tell the difference. "Where will you go?" she asked, voice small. "I already did," I said. "I just hadn't packed." She clutched the envelope to her chest like it could undo anything, like paperwork could soften betrayal. I looked at her one last time. At the girl who once filled this place with laughter and sunlight and spontaneous music in the kitchen. At the woman who replaced all that with filters and excuses. "I loved you," I said simply. "And you loved this house, that was the difference." Then I turned, left her standing in the sun-drenched kitchen. Behind me, the coffee went cold, but it didn't matter, because I didn't. Not to her, not anymore. She stood in the hallway like a ghost retracing her own haunting. The same hallway she once danced through barefoot, dripping paint on the wood, laughing at how terrible her music taste was. Now, the walls that used to echo with her laughter had turned still, like they were holding their breath for closure. Her fingers hovered just above the doorframes, as if touching them might reverse time. As if this house might recognize her again, might forgive her. Her eyes darted from one room to the next, confused, wide, desperate. "This was ours," she whispered. A confession, a plea, a line drawn in sand with waves already rushing in. But I didn't answer, because it wasn't, not anymore. And deep down, I think she already knew. The emerald kitchen, her green dream, she once called it, is now Elise's. Her plants already line the windowsill, herbs curling toward the sun, alive in ways our love stopped being. The bedroom, stripped. The silk curtains she claimed would make us feel hotel spoiled, were gone, donated. I'd slept under them alone far too long for them to ever feel like luxury again. And the living room, our so-called memory wall. It was being repainted gray. Not out of bitterness, but because neutrality was finally a comfort. She stepped into the living room like it might still breathe her name. Her eyes landed on the mantel. Her hand reached out. I moved gently but firmly, placing my hand over hers before she could touch it. Her skin flinched under mine, still warm, still familiar. But I didn't hold on, I let go before it could mean anything. "Don't ouch what you abandoned," I said. Her eyes snapped up to meet mine, full of storm clouds that came too late. "I didn't abandon it," she said. I lost track." I let out a quiet breath. The kind that comes from somewhere between tired and too late. "You made this house your world," I said. "I let you. I wanted you to. But somewhere along the way, I became the stranger in it. The one holding the ladder but never appearing in the painting." She blinked. Tears, maybe. Maybe just the dust of memories floating back to sting her eyes. "I thought you'd always be here," she murmured. Not an apology, not quite an admission either, just truth. The kind that comes once it no longer helps. "I was," I said. "For every paint stroke, every fixture, every dinner you missed, every morning you stayed in bed texting someone who wasn't me." She turned away at that. The silence between us wasn't anger, it was recognition. She knew she'd left long before the closing papers were signed. "This house had a heartbeat," she said, barely audible. "It felt like art, like something real." "It was real," I replied, "but only to one of us." She walked into the sunroom, the one she used to call her sanctuary, now emptied out, stripped bare. No books, no glass jars, no folded throws with tea stains and dreams tucked into corners. Only light, pure, indifferent light, no longer shaped by her presence. She stood in the middle, spinning slowly once, just once. And I realized she was saying goodbye. Even if she wouldn't admit it. "You'll let her paint everything over?" she asked softly, not turning around. "I won't stop her," I said. "She's not erasing something, she's starting something." She nodded, once, then turned back toward the hallway, where her past life still clung to the wallpaper like perfume long since faded. At the front door, she paused, her hand hovered over the knob. For a second, I thought she might turn. Say something that would crack me open again, a final plea, a memory, a fragment of the girl I fell in love with. But she didn't. She opened the door, stepped out. And just before it closed behind her, I heard her whisper, not to me, not even to herself, but to the walls that once held her name. "Thank you for letting me live here. Even when I didn't know how to stay." The latch clicked. And just like that, another room vanished. It's strange how loud silence can feel when you're not ready for it. But stranger still, how comforting it becomes once you stop expecting an answer. For weeks, she tried. Texts came first, short, cautious ones. "Can we talk? Please? I miss you." I didn't open them, I didn't need to. Because I knew what came next. The apologies laced in self-pity, the rewrites of memory, the pleas that sounded more like PR than confession. Then the calls, late at night, always when the world was quietest, as if loneliness hit hardest when no one was watching. Then a voice memo, just one. It arrived at 2:11 a.m., titled, "Sorry." I didn't press play, but I saw the waveform. I saw where her voice cracked halfway through, where her breath staggered in silence. I saw the grief she performed for the phone mic. And for the first time, I didn't ache, I didn't flinch, I didn't wonder what I'd done wrong. Because silence was finally mine. I had given her everything, my time, my patience, my hands when hers were too full of ambition, my ears when she needed an audience. But when I needed presence, she gave me performance. Now, silence held me like she never could, without demand, without spectacle, without pretending to be something it wasn't. I learned through someone, an old mutual friend I didn't ask about, that the man from the beach didn't last long. He was her next project, they said, smiled, then looked away. Didn't like being turned into content. I almost laughed, but it wasn't funny. Because I knew what it felt like, to be consumed, romanticized, then archived. People like her, they love you best in camera-ready doses. Meanwhile, life moved on in ways I didn't expect. Elise, the woman who bought the house, sent me a message one morning, a photo of the kitchen, filled with lilies in mason jars, sunlight drenching the counter like spilled gold. She wrote, "I don't know what this house went through before, but the light in this kitchen feels warm and healing. Thought you should know." I stared at that message for a long time. Warm and healing. Two words I never associated with that kitchen. To me, it had always felt like obligation, like unspoken tension and missed meals and conversations cut short by glowing phone screens. But maybe warmth had always been there, it just never had room to breathe. And now? Now it bloomed in someone else's hands. A stranger who saw past the scars on the walls and decided to grow something new. I sometimes wonder if the house remembers me. If the floor still creaks where I used to pace. If the walls still carry traces of my voice, soft and pleading. If the wind through the window still sounds like the silence she left behind. But I don't visit, not because it hurts, but because it doesn't anymore. The day I stopped replying was the day I started remembering who I was before I became her background. I read again, slept in, cooked for one, and liked it. I stopped checking who viewed my stories, stopped wondering if she saw my name and felt anything. Because the truth is, some people don't miss you, they miss the version of themselves they were when you loved them. And I can't carry her reflection anymore. These days, my phone's quiet, no buzz, no badge icon screaming for attention, just space. And in that space, there's peace. I walked past the mirror this morning and didn't look away. And for the first time, I didn't see a man waiting to be seen. This year, I didn't set the table, no candles, no playlist curated to feel like falling in love again, no pasta simmering with the memory of her laughter echoing off kitchen tiles. The dining room stayed dark, chairs untouched, the space where her plate once waited now blank, quiet, free. I didn't check the clock, didn't scroll through her profile waiting to feel something sharp. Instead, I got in the car, keys in one hand, silence in the other. The roads hummed beneath the tires, a gentle song of movement. Outside the windshield, the city blinked past in soft gold and muted gray. Billboards, storefronts, her face was probably on one of them, but I didn't look. I drove past the beach, the same one where her new shoot was trending, the same shoreline that once knew our footprints side by side, uneven but committed. I didn't stop, didn't slow, just passed it like a closed chapter, spine cracked and pages faded. Let them photograph her against golden hour, let them marvel at her angles and filters. Let her be adored by strangers who never had to know the versio. In of her that forgot anniversaries and slept beside silence. She was always good in front of the lens. I just never realized I was behind it, cropped out of the frame, always holding it steady for her best light. I kept driving, past the tourists, past the cafes we once called ours, past the life we rehearsed until the script no longer made sense. I found myself on a road with no streetlights, just sky, and breath, and quiet. A quiet place, tucked between hills and wind, no pastel walls whispering her name, no scent of her shampoo clinging to curtains, just air that didn't know her, didn't miss her, didn't mourn me. I stepped out of the car. The breeze was cool, not cold, it wrapped around me like a coat I hadn't worn in years. There was no view, just openness, and that was enough. I pulled out the bottle from the passenger seat, not white, not the kind she used to like, light and sweet, served chilled like her affection in the final months, no, red bold, room temperature, honest. I poured it into a single glass, no second one waiting beside it, no toast rehearsed for someone who wouldn't show. And I raised it. Not to love, not to what was, but to peace, to the stillness that followed the storm, to the silence that spoke louder than her apologies, to the man I had to become when she forgot how to hold me without checking her phone. To the truth that some anniversaries mark endings, not beginnings, and some promises, when broken enough times, become quiet freedom. I took a slow sip. The wine burned in my throat, but it was the good kind of burn, the one that says, "You're awake now." A breeze passed through the trees nearby, and in it, I imagined all the things I didn't need to say anymore, all the why didn't yous, all the please just be honest with me's. All the quiet questions that used to line my pillow at night. Gone. I sat on the hood of the car for a while, legs stretched out, stars barely winking into view. She would be smiling somewhere, camera lights flashing, praises filling her ears like lullabies, posing in someone else's warmth. Still curating perfection for a crowd that didn't have to live with her silence. But me, I didn't miss her. Not this time, not today, not anymore. Because on the day she missed again, I finally arrived. And this glass, it wasn't for her, it was for the boy who waited too many nights at a table she never came home to. The man who finally stood up, poured out the last of the dream, and toasted not to her memory, but to his own return.